Now to the politics. Anthony Albanese's trek through South America is looking more and more bizarre. In fact, it's no wonder the Chinese dictatorship has praised our Prime Minister in the official media as a role model for other leaders for distancing himself more from America. And Albanese sure has earned that praise now. Americans have just voted for Donald Trump as president, but Trump will still be sworn in for another 2 months. So that kind of makes the two meetings that Albanese has been going to in South America a bit irrelevant. The APEC meeting of Asia-Pacific leaders in Peru last week, and now the G20 meeting of leaders of the top 20 economies over in Brazil. Trump is at neither of those meetings. Yet our Prime Minister is using them to apparently already whip up opposition to Trump in a way China would love. Trump promises to impose big tariffs, especially on China. So Albanese is there preaching free trade. Trump says global warming is a scam, promises to take America out of the Paris Agreement to cut emissions. So Albanese is over there preaching that making the move to more solar, wind and green hydrogen is essential for us to deal with the threat that climate change poses. And China would love Albanese keeping up that global warming scare. That's because it last week asked Australia and the rest of the developed world to give it and 133 less developed countries $1.8 trillion a year, supposedly to help them fight global warming. That works out pro rata to every Australian man, woman and child giving $1,500 every year to communist China, plus a lot of poorer countries, including other hostile dictatorships. Iran, the Taliban's Afghanistan, North Korea, Syria. I could go on. Now, the bad news, the even worse news, is that our Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, is a real global warming crusader, is co-chair of the United Nations group, which at this meeting, this climate change meeting in the UN in Baku right now, is going to be working out how much Australians and others should pay all these poorer countries. And he hasn't ruled out this demand from China and its 133 friends. He's just said the reported position isn't our position, but we won't be preempting negotiations that are taking place. He can't rule it out, won't rule it out. You know what's going on here? China is beating up the global warming scare to make the West weak and to win friends in less developed countries. You know, so we've got to cut our emissions at terrible cost, while China, under the Paris Agreement, being supposedly one of these poor countries, can emit more, and it's doing exactly that. It's the world's biggest emitter by far, and it's doing that to get rich as fast as possible. And now it's using global warming to extort guilt money from us as well. Win-win. And your Prime Minister, praised by China, says nothing. Says, in fact, global warming really is bad. Says we must spend even more to cut our emissions. And that's when a new study of schemes around the world, by the way, to cut emissions worked out that of the 1,500 looked at, it identified just 63 that were successful. But I bring hope that finally this great scam is being challenged, and strongly, despite Albanese. Donald Trump has now named the man he wants to be his energy secretary, his counterpart to our Chris Bowen. It's another Chris, Wright, who made a fortune fracking for gas, a technology banned in Victoria, but which Wright said was so safe that he could drink the fracking fluid which green activists claim poisons groundwater.
Cheers! Cheers.
But Wright also says global warming is not a crisis.
There is no climate crisis, and we're not in the midst of an energy transition either. Since the end of World War II, global human life expectancy, wealth, health, and opportunity have surged like never before. Hence, any negative impacts from climate change were clearly overwhelmed by the benefits of increasing energy consumption.
Now imagine what Donald Trump and this energy secretary of his are going to do, not just to America's economy by getting more cheap energy, unlike us, but also due to the international debate about cutting emissions at such a terrible cost, as we're seeing with our own power prices. Yet there's our Prime Minister still saying, got to do more about global warming. There's our Energy Minister still saying, we've got to discuss paying this $1.8 trillion to China and its mates. Don't you wish we had adults in Canberra too?